History, as we are taught it, is a linear ascent. We are told that humanity climbed slowly from the caves, mastered fire, invented the wheel, and eventually mapped the world. We are told that before the age of European exploration, the globe was a mystery, its oceans vast and uncharted. What if a document existed that shattered that timeline? A map drawn in 1513 that depicts coastlines not discovered for another 3 centuries. A chart that renders the topography of Antarctica with a precision that should require satellite technology, yet shows the continent before it was buried under miles of ice. For decades, one man has argued that these artifacts are the smoking gun of a forgotten chapter in human history. To the establishment, he is a heretic. To his followers, he is the only one asking the dangerous questions. This is not just a story about a map. It is a story about a lost civilization, a global cataclysm, and the terrifying possibility that we are a species with amnesia. To understand the mystery, we must first understand the architect. Piri Reis was not a fantasist. He was an admiral of the Ottoman Navy, a man whose life depended on the accuracy of his charts. In naval warfare, a bad map doesn't just mean getting lost, it means death. In 1513, in the imperial capital of Constantinople, Reis compiled a world map. It was a masterpiece of cartography, detailed on gazelle skin, incorporating the latest Portuguese and Spanish discoveries. But Reis admitted something curious in his own marginal notes. He claimed he was not the original creator of this geography. He wrote that his work was a compilation, stitched together from 20 older source maps. Some came from contemporary explorers like Columbus, but others, Reis claimed, dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, and perhaps even earlier. For centuries, the map gathered dust in the Topkapi Palace Library. It was a relic, beautiful but misunderstood. That changed in 1929 when it was rediscovered and subjected to modern scrutiny. What researchers found didn't just confuse them, it frightened them. The map showed the eastern coast of South America with near-perfect longitudinal accuracy, a mathematical feat that European navigators wouldn't master for another 200 years. But as eyes drifted south, the anomaly became undeniable. At the bottom of the Piri Reis map lies a landmass that connects to South America. For years, skeptics dismissed it as a cartographic error, a distorted version of Patagonia. But in the 1960s, the United States Air Force took a closer look. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer of the 8th Reconnaissance Technical Squadron analyzed the map against seismic data from the 1949 Swedish-British Antarctic expedition. His conclusion was official, precise, and deeply unsettling. Ohlmeyer confirmed that the map did not just show the coastline of Antarctica, it showed the subglacial topography of Queen Maud Land. It depicted bays, islands, and river mouths that are currently buried under a mile of solid ice. Here is the impossible variable. The last time Queen Maud Land was free of ice and visible to the human eye was approximately 4000 BC. But recent geological evidence suggests the coastline might have been fully navigable only prior to 12,000 years ago, during the end of the last ice age. Antarctica was not officially discovered by modern civilization until 1820, yet we are staring at a document that suggests someone surveyed it thousands of years earlier. This requires more than just a boat. It requires trigonometry, spherical geometry, and a method of calculating longitude that rivals modern science. Who mapped the world before history began? If the Piri Reis map were the only one, we might call it a fluke, a lucky guess by a medieval artist, but it is not alone. Graham Hancock and a growing number of independent researchers point to a class of documents known as portolan charts, appearing in Europe around the 13th century. These maps seem to emerge from nowhere, possessing a level of mathematical sophistication that medieval Europe simply did not possess. The Orontius Phineus map of 1531 shows Antarctica with mountain ranges in river valleys that match modern radar scans. The Mercator map of 1569 depicts the continent with details that were not verified until the mid-20th century. These maps share a fingerprint. They utilize a projection method that accounts for the curvature of the Earth, a concept that was barely understood in the Middle Ages. The implication is staggering. It suggests that medieval mapmakers were not drawing these lands from their own exploration. They were acting as copyists. They were preserving fragments of a much older global archive, perhaps one that originated in the legendary Library of Alexandria before it burned. These are not medieval maps. They are time capsules. This is where Graham Hancock steps into the fray. For decades, the British journalist and author has woven these cartographic anomalies into a cohesive, if controversial, theory. Hancock argues that 12,800 years ago, during a period known as the Younger Dryas, the Earth suffered a cataclysm. Whether by comet impact, solar outburst, or rapid climate shift, the result was the same: a massive rise in sea levels, the extinction of megafauna, and, according to Hancock, the erasure of an advanced human civilization. Mainstream archaeology tells us that 12,000 years ago, our ancestors were simple hunter-gatherers, chipping flint in small nomadic bands. Hancock argues that the maps prove otherwise. He posits that a civilization existed back then that was capable of navigating the globe, a culture that had mapped the Americas and Antarctica long before the rise of Egypt or Sumer. When the cataclysm struck, their coastal cities were swallowed by the rising oceans and their population was decimated. The survivors, the magicians of the gods as he calls them, scattered, carrying with them the remnants of their knowledge. The maps we see today are the fading photocopies of that lost golden age. This theory has made Hancock public enemy number one in the halls of academia. To the archaeological establishment, Graham Hancock is a pseudoscientist. Organizations like the Society for American Archaeology have issued open letters condemning his work, claiming it devalues the achievements of indigenous peoples and relies on fantasy rather than stratigraphy. In April 2024, the conflict reached a boiling point. Hancock faced off against archaeologist Flint Dibble on the Joe Rogan Experience. It was billed as the debate of the century, the establishment versus the outsider. Dr. Dibble arrived armed with data, pointing out the lack of physical debris. Where are the pots? Where are the plastic tools? Where is the trash that a global civilization would leave behind? But for Hancock, the absence of evidence is evidence of the cataclysm itself. If a civilization was built on coastlines that are now 400 feet underwater, how would we ever find their trash? He argues that archaeology is looking in the wrong places, blinded by a dogma that refuses to accept that we might not be the first apex culture to walk this earth. The debate didn't silence Hancock. If anything, the ferocity of the attacks has only amplified his message. When institutions resort to censorship and character assassination rather than open inquiry, one has to ask, what are they protecting? We must return to the most unsettling aspect of the maps, the mathematics. To draw a map like Piri Reis with such longitudinal precision, you need an accurate clock to measure time against the rotation of the Earth. You need an understanding of the globe's circumference. Some have gone a step further, suggesting the distortions in these ancient maps mimic the perspective of a distinct vantage point, the air. Is it possible that the lost civilization possessed technology that we would recognize? Perhaps not rockets or satellites, but methods of aerial survey or triangulation that are lost to us. Or did they possess a mental faculty, a way of understanding the Earth that we have simply forgotten? The maps are stubborn. They exist. They are ink on parchment, carbon-dated and real. You can argue about the interpretation, but you cannot argue away the ink. Someone saw Antarctica before the ice claimed it. Someone measured the world when we were supposed to be living in caves. If Graham Hancock is right, the story of humanity is not a straight line. It is a cycle, a loop of rise and ruin. These maps serve as a warning.
They remind us that civilization is fragile. We build our cities on the coasts, just as they did. We trust in our technology, just as they might have. And yet, all it took was one bad day in the cosmic calendar to wipe them clean from the pages of history, leaving only a few scraps of gazelle skin to whisper their existence. The question isn't just, who were they? The real question is, will we be remembered, or will the ice claim our maps too?